My name is Sandy Morgan. I'm 30 years old, and I've never been the kind of woman who fills a room when she walks in. I'm the quiet one near the edges of conversations, listening more than speaking, smiling politely while others chase attention. I don't wear designer anything. I drive a used Civic that's fully paid off and still pack my lunch for work. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, every inch of it earned and calm. That calm was what I thought Andrew loved about me. When we first met, he said my steadiness made him feel safe. His last few relationships had been with people who treated life like a runway, loud, extravagant, always performing. He told me I was different. Being with you feels like finally exhaling, he'd said once, half laughing into my hair. I believed him. We'd been together for about 3 years when the cracks began showing. Not between us at first, but around us. Mostly his mother, Elaine. She was the kind of woman who turned every family event into a silent competition. Her voice was sugar-coated, but her eyes always measured. From the first moment we met, I knew she didn't think I belonged in their world. Not openly rude, just that sharp politeness people use when they think they're too good to be cruel. When I came over, she'd smile and ask, "So Sandy, when do you plan on moving into something bigger? Or you still work with your hands? That's admirable." Andrew would roll his eyes later and say, "She means well. But there's only so many times you can hear that before you realize she doesn't." Still, I showed up birthdays, brunches, barbecues. I wanted to belong somewhere in his world. I loved Andrew. He had this warmth that drew people in, social, charming, funny in a way that made you feel seen. Maybe that's why I kept trying so hard to make his family like me. I thought if they saw how much I loved him, they'd see I was good enough. But love isn't a currency you can trade for approval. There were small moments that should have warned me. When we were shopping for his cousin's engagement gift, he said, "Let's get something nice. My mom's always comparing us to them." Or when he hesitated to introduce me to distant relatives as if bracing for judgment. But I stayed. I've never been someone who runs from discomfort. I fix things. I wait for people to come around. So when Elaine invited me to their annual summer party, a huge event with her business friends and extended family, I took it as progress. An olive branch Andrew had said as we got ready, "Just be yourself, okay? Don't overthink it." I smiled faintly. I'm always myself. He didn't answer. Maybe that should have been my first warning. Their house was the kind that whispers money without saying a word. 3 stories, all white stone and glass, the kind of modern minimalism that still somehow feels smug. Elaine greeted us at the door, air-kissed Andrew, and gave me the kind of smile people save for a waitress who brought the wrong order but still tried her best. "Glad you could make it, Sandy," she said. "We've got some real go-getters here tonight. Maybe you'll make a few connections." "I'll do my best," I replied, not sure what that meant. Inside, everyone looked polished, the kind of people who introduce themselves with job titles first and names second. I stayed near Andrew, nodding through introductions, laughing where appropriate. It was fine for a while, surface-level conversations about wine travel and who's doing what now. Andrew thrived in it. I could see the pride in Elaine's eyes as her son charmed everyone in sight. He looked like he belonged. And me, I was background decor, pleasant, forgettable. After dinner, the mood turned hazy, people half drunk, half bored. I was stacking plates, trying to help, when Elaine's voice sliced through the chatter like a knife. "Andrew, sweetheart, come here a moment," she called, clinking her wine glass. Her voice carried across the patio, drawing everyone's attention. Andrew hesitated but obeyed. I stayed near the table, still holding a plate, watching as she smiled at him, then at her guests. "You really do light up a room, darling," she said. "You've always been the ambitious one, the handsome one." Her voice was syrupy sweet. "You know, people always say men should date up, but you—" She turned toward me, her smile freezing into something sharper you shouldn't have to settle. Laughter, nervous, scattered. Someone coughed. My heart stopped. Andrew's expression flickered. Embarrassment, guilt, confusion. But he said nothing. I put the plate down, slowly. "Mom, don't," Andrew muttered under his breath. Elaine only waved him off. "Oh, I'm just teasing, everyone's thinking it." She looked straight at me, eyes glinting. "Honey, you're a 10. You don't need to settle for her 6. Time slowed. I could feel every eye on me, the soft music fading into silence. The words landed like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because Andrew didn't stop her. He just stood there, shifting uncomfortably, as if silence could make it disappear. Elaine sipped her wine, satisfied. "Don't be so sensitive, dear," she added, still smiling at me. It was just a joke. I met her gaze calm but unflinching. You're right, Elaine, I said quietly. Your son shouldn't have to settle. Then I looked at Andrew. Congratulations, you've got your 10. And I walked away. The laughter didn't follow me this time, just the brittle hush of polite people pretending nothing had happened. The drive home was silent. No music, no tears, no anger, just that hollow stillness that comes when something breaks clean. When I parked, I sat there for a long time, hands on the steering wheel. The humiliation wasn't what hurt most. It was the realization that Andrew's silence wasn't shock, it was agreement. My phone buzzed with his messages hours later. Sandy, you overreacted. She was joking. Please don't make this bigger than it is. Sandy, you embarrass me. Everyone's talking about how you stormed off. I read them both and turned the phone face down on the counter. That night I slept better than I had in months, because for the first time I wasn't trying to belong somewhere I was never meant to be. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds like nothing had happened. I stood in my kitchen with a mug of coffee trying to decide whether I still cared. My phone buzzed again. Andrew. No good morning, no apology, just, can we talk? A few hours later, I heard the familiar sound of his key turning in the lock. He hadn't waited for me to answer. That was Andrew, always confident that he could talk his way through anything. He walked in with the same easy posture he used in board meetings, trying to appear calm but failing. So that's it, he asked, tossing his keys onto the counter. You just walk out of a family event and ignore me all night. I didn't look up from my laptop. You let your mom humiliate me in front of 20 people. She was drunk, he said quickly. You know how she gets. You didn't even defend me. He sighed like I was being unreasonable. I didn't want to make it worse. If I'd said something, it would have turned into a scene. I closed my laptop slowly. It already was a scene, Andrew. You just didn't want to be the one in it. For the first time, he hesitated. That brief flicker of guilt in his eyes almost gave me hope, but it vanished just as fast. You're overreacting, he said. She was being an idiot, but everyone knows she runs her mouth. You can't just storm out like that and make me look crazy in front of my family. That word me. Everything was always about him. I said nothing. The silence stretched until even he started fidgeting. Then softer, he added, You know she doesn't mean it. She just wants what's best for me. That was the moment it hit me. He actually believed that. I stood calm but cold. You think what's best for you is someone else, I said quietly. That's fine. But you don't get to keep me around as your backup plan while your mother shops for upgrades. His mouth opened, then closed. Oh my God, that's not. Save it, I said, raising a hand. I'm not angry, Andrew. I just finally get it. You and I were never in the same relationship. I was building something real, and you were curating an image. He blinked, stunned by the steadiness in my voice. I wasn't yelling, and that unnerved him. So what, he asked, incredulous. You're breaking up with me over my mother. I met his eyes. No, because of your silence. The air went still. He stared, then scoffed, reaching for his jacket. You'll regret this, he said flatly. Not every guy would put up with. I cut him off with a faint smile. You're right. Not every guy would. He didn't have a response to that. The door slammed behind him, and the echo lingered long after his footsteps faded. The following weeks were quiet in a way that felt almost sacred. My apartment stopped feeling like a place I shared. It became mine. I changed my number, deleted his photos, and scrubbed his name from my playlists. But every now and then, a memory would drift in a late-night drive, his laugh, the way he used to trace patterns on my arm. Grief doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sighs softly, pretending to be nostalgia. One evening, as I was rearranging my bookshelves, my phone lit up with an unknown number. A text. Hope you're happy. Mom feels awful. You could at least be mature about this. I didn't reply. Some silences are kinder than explanations. Over time, something shifted inside me. The quiet stopped feeling empty. It started feeling peaceful. I found new routines. Sunday hikes, homemade dinners, long phone calls with friends I'd slowly lost touch with. They told me I seemed lighter. I didn't tell them how good it felt to finally breathe without walking on someone else's eggshells. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if Andrew ever looked back, if he missed the version of himself who didn't need to impress anyone. But then I'd remember that people like him don't look back. They look around constantly measuring what's next. 3 months after the breakup, I saw Elaine again. It was at a cafe near my office. She was sitting by the window sipping tea, perfectly composed as always. When she noticed me, her smile flickered. Sandy, she said, standing, you look, well. I smiled politely. I am. She hesitated, clearly searching for the right tone. Andrew mentioned, you've moved on. I raised an eyebrow. Good for him. Her voice softened, almost conspiratorial. Between you and me, I think he rushed into his new relationship, but she's lovely, really. Comes from a wonderful family. There it was, the subtext. See, he's still doing better without you. I nodded. Of course. That's what matters, right? For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her face. Uncertainty, maybe. A small crack in that perfect mask. I didn't wait for her to recover. I wished her a pleasant day and left. Walking home, I realized I no longer felt bitterness, just clarity. Elaine hadn't humiliated me by accident. She'd done it to test me to see if I'd stand up for myself or shrink back into silence. I'd passed a test I never signed up for, just not in the way she expected. And Andrew, he'd failed in a way only a man too afraid of losing approval can fail by saying nothing when it mattered most. I went home that evening, lit a candle, poured myself a glass of wine, and opened my journal. I wrote one line across the page. Silence can be cruel, but sometimes it's the only language peace speaks. 3 months. That's how long it took before I saw his name again. Not in my inbox, not on my phone, but in someone else's smiling post. A mutual acquaintance had tagged Andrew in a photo from a vineyard weekend. Him and a woman I didn't recognize, arms wrapped around each other, all filtered sunlight and expensive happiness. Her name was Isabel. I clicked once, twice, and there it was, endless photos of perfection. Candlelit dinners, rooftop parties, travel hashtags, and always Elaine in the comments. My perfect son with his perfect match. I stared for a long moment, not out of jealousy, but out of clarity. Elaine hadn't lost her project, she'd simply found a new one. I closed the app and exhaled. For the first time, it didn't hurt. It just confirmed everything I already knew. I was never the one she wanted for her son, just the one she tolerated until something better appeared. My life, meanwhile, had become quietly steady. No parties, no pretenses. I spent evenings cooking recipes I'd once been too busy to try. Weekends were hikes, art markets, or simply reading by the window. People mistake peace for loneliness. They don't realize peace is what you find when you stop negotiating your worth. Still, there were moments when the silence pressed too tightly. Like when I passed a restaurant we used to go to and instinctively reached for my phone, then remembered there was no one to text. Healing wasn't glamorous. It was mundane and slow, like watching paint dry and realizing you like the color after all. One Saturday, while I was running errands, fate or irony decided to test me. I was in the grocery store checkout line when I saw Elaine. No designer sunglasses this time, no entourage. Just her standing in front of me with a basket of organic fruit and imported cheese. She turned startled and then recovered with a brittle smile. Sandy. What a surprise. I smiled politely. Hi, Elaine. She adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous tick I'd seen a dozen times. You look well. I am. A pause. Then, as if she couldn't help herself, Andrew mentioned you found a new job. That's wonderful. He and Isabel just bought a place downtown. She's such a lovely girl, so poised. Comes from a wonderful family. There it was again, that gleam of pride disguised as casual conversation. That's great, I said evenly. I hope they're happy. For a moment she looked almost disappointed that I didn't flinch. Between you and me, she added in a low voice, leaning closer, I think it's all moving a little fast. But she's good for him. Very polished. Ambitious. I'm sure she is. I handed my groceries to the cashier and smiled. Have a nice day, Elaine. The look she gave me was hard to describe, half confusion, half irritation. Like she'd prepared for a performance I refused to join. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and scrolled through social media again, not for Andrew, but for the reminder of what I'd escaped. The photos were endless boat trips, designer clothes, champagne brunches. But behind all that gloss, something felt strained, posed. Every caption from Isabel sounded rehearsed. So proud of my man, power couple goals. Andrew looked stiff, the kind of smile you give a camera, not a person. I clicked out of the app. I'd seen enough. Weeks passed. The air grew warmer, the days longer. My apartment began to feel less like a place I'd retreated to and more like a space I'd built. I started a new project at work, something I'd been too afraid to apply for before. My coworkers respected me for my focus, my calm under pressure. The very traits Elaine once called uninspired were now my biggest strengths. I was rediscovering myself in quiet ways, buying fresh flowers, repainting my living room, even taking a weekend pottery class. Each small act felt like reclaiming ground I hadn't realized I'd given away. Then one morning my phone buzzed with a notification that made my stomach drop. Andrew Thompson tagged in a news article. I almost didn't click, but curiosity cruel and familiar won. The headline read, "Local investment firm under investigation for fraud and client misconduct." And there in the photo was Isabel's boyfriend, Ethan, the man Andrew's family had celebrated so proudly for months, the one Elaine had once called a real 10. Ethan had scammed clients, drained accounts, and vanished with investor funds. And guess whose name appeared as a corporate liaison on one of the company's documents, Andrew's. I stared at the screen, stunned but not shocked. For years, Elaine had measured people by their polish, their income, their posture at dinner tables, and now that same world she worshipped had swallowed her son whole. 2 weeks later, the headlines got worse. Lawsuits, frozen assets, Isabel's tearful statement to the press, "I didn't know. I was lied to." I closed the app, not out of satisfaction but out of fatigue. It was almost poetic, their obsession with image collapsing under the weight of its own performance. That evening, I sat on my balcony as the city lights blinked below. The air smelled like rain. I thought of Andrew, not the man Elaine wanted him to be, but the boy I'd once loved, the one who found peace in my calm. He'd traded peace for approval, and approval, it turned out, was the most expensive currency of all. I raised my glass quietly to the night. "To peace," I whispered, "and to not being the perfect replacement." The first message came early one morning, just after sunrise. "Andrew, hey, I know it's been a while, but could we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. No punctuation, no explanation, just that half-familiar tone of someone who assumes the door might still be open. I put my phone down and went back to my coffee. An hour later, another one arrived. "Andrew, I wouldn't reach out if it wasn't important. I just really need someone who actually understands me right now." Still, I didn't reply. By evening, the text grew longer, desperate. "Andrew, you probably saw what's been happening. It's not what it looks like. I swear I didn't know anything about it. He lied to me, to my parents, to everyone. I feel like such an idiot. Please, can we just talk for 5 minutes? You were always the only one who really cared." That line, "you were always the only one who really cared," felt like bait, and once I would have taken it. But silence had become my armor. I didn't block him. I didn't respond. I just let the messages sit there blinking quietly on my screen like echoes of the person I used to be. 3 days later, I woke to a missed call, 2:14 a.m., then another at 3:07, and a voice message. Curiosity is a cruel thing. You know you shouldn't, but you press play anyway. His voice was uneven, somewhere between guilt and panic. "I didn't listen to you, and I should have. You were right about everything. He took money from my parents. My mom's panicking. I don't know what to do. Please, Sandy, just call me back." I listened once, then again, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because the version of me who might have cared didn't live here anymore. A week passed before I saw Elaine again. It was at a small cafe near my office, the kind of place she'd once dismissed as quaint. I almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone were the pearls, the perfect blowout, the air of untouchable pride. She looked ordinary, tired. She noticed me before I could leave. "Oh," she said weakly. "Sandy." I nodded. "Elaine." Her smile faltered. "You look well." "I am." She glanced at the empty chair across from me. "Do you mind?" I hesitated, then gestured toward it. She sat wrapping her trembling hands around her cup. "You've probably heard," she said after a moment, voice barely steady. "He took everything. My husband's savings, our retirement, even Andrew's accounts. We're dealing with lawyers, police, everything." I said nothing. Her eyes searched mine. "I suppose you must feel vindicated." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "No," I said softly. "Just lucky." For a second, something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or realization. "Andrew's been trying to reach you," she murmured. "He thinks you could help him. Maybe give him guidance. He's lost everything." I almost laughed. Guidance from the woman he once let his mother humiliate. The irony was too sharp to taste. "I hope he figures things out," I said, standing. "But I'm not the person he needs to call anymore." "You really won't speak to him?" she asked, desperate now. I met her eyes. "Your son and I already had our final conversation. He just didn't realize it." Then I walked away. That night, curiosity won again. There was a new voicemail waiting. I pressed play. His voice was smaller this time. "I'm sorry. I thought I knew what I wanted, but I didn't. He isolated me from everyone, even my friends. I'm staying with my parents now, but it's bad. Mom's angry all the time. Dad barely talks. I miss how calm everything used to be. You made things feel safe. Please, Sandy, just say something. Anything." The words drifted through the room like smoke, heavy, desperate, fading. I stared at my phone for a long time, then deleted the message. By then, my own life had started to bloom again. The new project I'd joined in turned into a promotion. My boss called me reliable, a word I used to hate but now wore like a medal. And there was someone new. Michael, a friend of a coworker, steady, grounded, gentle in ways that didn't need proving. He asked questions and actually waited for the answers. He didn't need to perform, he just showed up. One night over dinner, he asked about my past. I hesitated, then told him the story, not the dramatic version, just the truth. The party, the silence, the walkout. When I finished, he didn't say, "You should have fought harder." He just nodded. "You're lucky," he said softly. "You saw who they were before they cost you more." And for the first time, I realized that was true. Months passed. The investigation surrounding Andrew's ex and his family grew louder. Their reputation, the thing Elaine prized most, was unraveling one headline at a time. But I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Some lessons don't need revenge. They just need distance. One evening, as I was locking up my apartment, a text arrived. "Andrew, seeing you again would mean a lot. I want to apologize in person." I stared at the screen, then typed 3 words. There's no need. No punctuation, no explanation, just closure. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. It had been nearly a year since that summer party, the night Elaine looked me up and down like a critic, reviewing a dish she'd already decided to dislike. Since then, I'd rebuilt quietly, brick by brick. The job that once felt temporary had become a career. My apartment, once a refuge, now felt like home. And Michael, he wasn't a whirlwind romance. He was the calm after every storm I'd survived. He laughed with his whole face, listened without fixing, and never made me feel like I had to earn my place beside him. Peace had a texture now. It felt like Sunday morning soft laughter and silence that didn't sting. But peace doesn't erase the past, it just stops it from controlling you. One Friday evening, I got a message from Tom, a mutual friend from Andrew's circle. "Tom, heads up. Andrew's going to be at Marlowe's tomorrow night. He's not doing great. Thought you should know before you walk in blind." I stared at the text for a while, debating. Part of me wanted to ignore it to stay wrapped in the safe life I'd built. But another part, the one that hated unfinished things, needed to see if the ghost of that old version of me still trembled around him. So the next night I went. Marlowe's was exactly the same: dim lights, overpriced drinks, people pretending to be busier and happier than they were. The air smelled like nostalgia and cheap cologne. I was halfway through a glass of wine when I saw him. Andrew. He looked smaller somehow. The confidence that once radiated from him was gone, replaced with that hollow weariness that comes when life teaches humility through pain. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a little too long. He spotted me before I could look away. For a split second, the old reflex kicked in. I almost smiled. But then he started walking over and I remembered why I shouldn't. "Sandy," he said softly, like he wasn't sure he had the right to say my name. "Andrew, you look—" he stopped himself. "You look really good." "I am," I said simply. We stood there for a moment, the silence thick with everything we'd left unsaid. Then he motioned toward a quiet booth. Against my better judgment, I followed. He didn't waste time pretending. "You probably think I deserve everything that's happened." I swirled the last of my wine. "I don't think about you much at all." That stung. I saw it in his eyes. He leaned forward, voice cracking. "He lied to me, Sandy. To everyone. Took money from my parents, from me. I feel so stupid. I thought I was doing the right thing, finally living up to what they wanted. And now," he laughed bitterly, "now they won't even look at me." I nodded. "I warned you once that people who talk in numbers eventually treat you like one." His jaw tightened. "You don't have to rub it in." "I'm not." I set my glass down gently. "Just reminding you how we got here." He looked down, eyes glassy. "I miss how simple it was with you, how calm. I didn't realize that mattered until it was gone." I didn't answer. After a long silence, he whispered, "Would you ever consider us starting over?" The words hung in the air like static. I took a breath, then said quietly, "No." He blinked. "Just like that. Just like that." His composure cracked. "After everything we had, you can't even think about it." "I did," I said softly. "Months ago. That's how I moved on." He leaned back, jaw tightening. "You've changed." "I grew." I stood up, picking up my purse. "Take care of yourself, Andrew." He looked up, eyes glistening. "She's not better than me, whoever she is." I turned just enough to meet his gaze. "You're right. She's just better for me." Then I walked away. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, expecting guilt to creep in, but it didn't. There was no sting, no ache, just the steady heartbeat of someone who'd finally stopped carrying a ghost. The next morning, Michael made pancakes and teased me for burning mine. I laughed so hard I forgot why I'd ever wanted quiet to feel heavy. Sometimes closure isn't dramatic. It's a conversation that ends without bitterness and a morning that begins with peace. A few weeks later came what I now call the real finale. My company hosted a formal charity gala, an elegant, glittering event meant to celebrate community leaders. I was invited as part of the project team. Michael came as my +1 wearing a navy suit that made him look both sharp and effortlessly kind. The ballroom was full of people in polished shoes and polished lives, and just as we stepped inside, I saw them. Elaine and Andrew. They stood near the entrance, perfectly dressed, but hollow behind their smiles. Elaine's pearls still gleamed, but her eyes were ringed with exhaustion. Andrew's charm had dulled into something quieter, almost hesitant. Elaine saw me first. "Sandy," she said stiffly, voice too smooth to hide the tension. "It's been a while." "It has," I replied. Michael smiled and extended a hand. "Nice to meet you." Elaine blinked, caught off guard by his warmth. "You're very lovely," she said automatically. "Thank you," Michael replied with an easy grin. "Sandy's told me you have quite the eye for people." For a moment, Elaine didn't know whether she'd been complimented or reminded. Andrew shifted beside her, voice barely a whisper. "How have you been?" "Good," I said simply. "Better than ever." The silence after that was real, the kind that carries truth instead of tension. Elaine muttered something about needing a drink and disappeared into the crowd. Andrew lingered, looking down at the floor. "You really did move on," he said quietly. "I told you I would." "She seems kind." "She is." He nodded, tears threatening, but never falling. "You always wanted simple, didn't you?" "No," I said gently. "I wanted peace. There's a difference." He swallowed hard. "I hope you're happy." "I am." And that was it, the last truth between us. Later that night, Michael and I stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. He wrapped his arm around my waist, his touch steady grounding. Inside, the laughter and music swelled. I caught a glimpse of Andrew across the room one last time. Our eyes met briefly, and in that instant, I saw understanding painful, late, but real. He finally saw that I was never the one who wasn't enough. He just didn't know how to recognize enough when he had it. He looked away first. Michael leaned in. "Do you know him?" "Used to," I said. That was all. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain against the windows, a steady, cleansing kind of rain that felt like punctuation. The night before replayed in flashes the soft glow of chandeliers, Michael's laughter, and the look on Andrew's face when he realized he no longer had the power to unsettle me. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was peace, the quiet kind that doesn't need witnesses. I made coffee, leaned by the window, and checked my phone. One new message. "Andrew. Seeing you last night made me realize what I lost. I'm sorry for how everything ended. I wish I'd stood up for you. I hope you forgive me someday." I read it once then, twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, out of closure. Some apologies come too late to matter. I wasn't the same woman he'd once known, the one who tolerated humiliation in the name of love, who mistook silence for patience and politeness for peace. I'd built something better from what they broke in me. Life after that moved quietly, beautifully. Michael and I spent weekends driving along the coast, windows down, music low, our hands brushing on the console. He never asked about the past again, and I never felt the need to bring it up. He knew the woman beside him wasn't defined by what she'd endured, but by what she'd refused to become. One evening, as the sun melted behind the skyline, he asked, "Do you ever think about them?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not in the way you think." He smiled. "How's that?" I sipped my tea. I think about how people can confuse love with validation, how easy it is to mistake admiration for care. Andrew didn't want me. He wanted approval. His mother didn't want me gone. She wanted to win. They were always playing games with scoreboards I never agreed to. Michael watched me quietly, his eyes soft, and now I said, smiling, "I don't play." Months later, I received an invitation. An alumni networking event hosted by a firm I'd once worked for. Normally, I'd ignore something like that, but curiosity tugged at me. There was a rumor Elaine's company was trying to rebuild its reputation, and they'd be there. I went, not out of pride, not out of revenge, just to see how far I'd come. The hotel ballroom buzzed with polite chatterglasses, clinking laughter practiced. I moved through the crowd easily, this time no longer the outsider trying to blend in. I belonged, not because anyone decided I did, but because I stopped asking permission. And then I saw her, Elaine. She stood by the buffet table, dressed impeccably, her expression as carefully arranged as her pearls. But her eyes were tired. For a second, she didn't recognize me. When she did, she froze, then offered a brittle smile. Sandy, you look radiant. Thank you, I said. You too. She blinked, unsure how to respond. You must be doing well. I am. A long silence stretched between us, an echo of every dinner, every judgment, every unspoken dismissal. Finally, she said quietly, I misjudged you. The words hung there like a fragile truce. I smiled faintly. No, you just didn't see me clearly. She nodded, eyes glistening but refusing to break. You were always different. Different isn't bad, I said gently. Sometimes it's just enough. For the first time since I'd known her, Elaine looked small, not because of what she'd lost, but because she finally understood what she'd tried to measure couldn't be measured at all. She excused herself, retreating to the safety of familiar voices. I didn't watch her go. That night, driving home, the city lights blurred in the rain. Michael reached over, resting his hand on mine. You okay? He asked. I nodded, better than ever. He smiled. You've got that faraway look again. Thinking about her. About all of it, I admitted. How people like Elaine and Andrew live their lives constantly rating everyone around them, and how freeing it is to finally stop asking for a score. Michael squeezed my hand. So what's your score now? I smiled at the road ahead, unrated. When we got home, I changed into pajamas, washed off the makeup, and looked at my reflection. For years, I'd measured my worth through the eyes of people who only saw value in appearances. Now my reflection wasn't flawless, but it was real. Peace doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. I turned off the lights, curled up beside Michael, and listened to the rain soften outside. The past had finally quieted. The lesson had settled. Because sometimes